Hey, everybody, it's Christian Pedersen, joined as always by, hey, everybody, it's Dan Dickau's podcast. Christian Pedersen just here to serve up the softballs. But hey, welcome back to another summer edition of us trying to fill content. This summer, Dan, the content gods keep on giving. Last summer, we flogged the dead horse of conference realignment and transfer portal to no avail and nothing happening. This year, the WCC has now expanded and absorbed other schools, and Dan did a great deep dive on that. You can go check out all of that, his full live reaction thoughts on our YouTube. Absolute must. We'll get to a little bit more of that though, in case Dan has any other follow-ups. We got transfer portal people coming to visit Gonzaga, and then some little zags in the pros to close out the podcast today. But Dan, let's start with the changes that have happened to the WCC. In case anybody missed your previous podcast, and like I said, go check that out for all of Dan's real intricate. Like he does a pretty deep dive on it. But Dan, just tee up the cliff notes for anybody that might have missed the news.
Yeah, so Grand Canyon University out of Phoenix and Seattle U, obviously in Seattle, both out of the WAC, are moving to the WCC effective in 2025. So one more year they will spend in the WAC, and then they'll come to the WCC. I think it's a tremendous add. You look at Grand Canyon; they've been in the tournament the last 3 years. They won the first game in school history this past year. Then you look at Seattle U, they're a sleeping giant. And I think a lot of the reasons they haven't taken that next step is because the WAC is such a weird league. The WAC doesn't have a good media rights deal, so you never get to see them on TV. They're battling splitting home games at Climate Pledge Arena, which is phenomenal setting in Seattle. But that's a 20,000 seat arena, and they're not that kind of program that can draw 20,000. So they're splitting games between there and splitting games on their on-campus gym, which I haven't been in that gym, to be honest with you, in 30 years since, well, 28 years since I was in high school. Last time actually I was in that gym, I had my nose broken in a high school spring league game. So I don't necessarily want to go back to that gym too many times, but they've renovated it since. The understanding is they're actually looking to build an on-campus arena around that 5,000 seat mark, which would be a huge opportunity to really kind of jump into that next echelon of college basketball programs. So those are the two that are coming to the league in a year from now. We've touched on Oregon State, Washington State, who it's by all intents and purposes is a 2-year deal with the league. Oregon State was in the Elite Eight, I think 3 or 4 years ago. They've hit rough patch since then, but it shows you what they're capable of. Washington State under Kyle Smith over the last 5 years has been tremendous. He's now at Stanford, but I wouldn't expect David Riley to take that program in the opposite direction. He's a great young coach. So you're looking at a team in Washington State that's fresh off, a 20-plus win season again, as well as an NCAA tournament appearance. So all signs point to the league being really strengthened. So if you're Pepperdine, if you're Pacific, if you're University of Portland, you got some work to do to continue to try to move in the direction of being relevant within this league, because I think the league has really been bolstered by these 4 additions. Granted, 2 of them for the upcoming year, 2 for the season beyond. But all in all, I really like the direction that Stu Jackson is leading the league in, with being aggressive as opposed to allowing leagues to quote unquote poach programs into the bigger leagues. Now Gonzaga, the big one out there, they're going to keep talking, I'm sure, with other leagues to see what makes sense for them to continue to stay, at that elite level nationally. But the WCC, I think, is doing what they can to continue to make the league as good as it could possibly be.
I want to backtrack on one thing and then follow up with what you said there at the end. I think it's interesting that we kind of seem to disagree a little bit on who's the bigger get. You talk about Seattle U being a real sleeping giant ready to explode. To me, Grand Canyon is getting Grand Canyon now into the WCC is the equivalent of buying Bitcoin at $100. To me, Grand Canyon over the last 5 years seems to have, and I say this with no real inside information, it's just from an external point of view watching, they seem to have realized that the way that they grow their applications, their enrollment, and their prestige is through publicity and athletics. And they do a ton of, like, from what I have heard and experienced, Grand Canyon University basketball games are very entertaining. They are not half-assing the experience for their students. And so recruiting kids, getting kids on transfer portals and doing whatever they can to, like you said, put their team in a bigger national spotlight seems to be something that that school really cares about. So I love that for the WCC, having a program that seems to be out for blood in every way, shape, and form, because they seem to want that to build out their university, just in terms of enrollment wise. At the end, though, you bring up something interesting about Gonzaga is still going to keep looking, but knowing now that the WCC is on the hunt and not on the retreat, does there come a point where if Oregon State, Washington State, like, or if if Seattle U and Grand Canyon both are making it to the, like, does there come a point at which the WCC just comes close enough to, it's not quite Power Five, but it's big enough and strong enough that the Gonzaga just stops looking, or will Gonzaga?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of realness in that comment. And if you look at, you know, Stu Jackson says he wants this to continuously be a multi-bid league. Well, a couple years back, it was a three-bid league: Gonzaga, St. Mary's, USF. It's traditionally been a two-bid league with Gonzaga and St. Mary's, but if you're having 12, 13 teams in the league and your top is even better than it historically has been, and those teams prepare themselves out of conference games, winning some of those marquee matchups that they can get on the schedule. That's going to prepare, each team in the league to have a better, well, RPI is not looked at hardly at all anymore, but better KenPom, better net rankings, better analytics to prepare themselves for possible at-large selections. So, I would imagine, that was all part of the consideration in adding two premier schools. Now, Grand Canyon's there, right? They are a NCAA tournament team. Seattle U is close. They're not quite there yet, right? They're a young and up and coming program. They've got a really good head coach in Chris Victor. We already mentioned the facilities upgrades that they're trying to figure out and see if it can come to fruition sooner rather than later.
Yeah, let's officially as a show endorse knocking down that gym where you broke your nose. Let's burn that place to the ground. Let's host a live feed from it as we hit it with the wrecking ball.
Yeah, I mean that's actually something I haven't thought about in years. That Seattle U gym, it used to be the site of spring league. So I grew up in the Vancouver, Washington, Portland area. I would drive up every weekend for high school spring league because that's how they used to select the traveling teams out of the state. Ran by Ed Peppel, who was the grandfather of Montana State head coach Matt Logie. He was kind of the godfather of all traveling teams in the state at the time. So you had to play in these leagues to be selected on a traveling team. So I would go up there throughout the spring. And what happened was had a good game, right? Final 30 seconds of the game, I'm pressuring defensively up at half court. And the guy I'm guarding just turns and looks at me and just gives me a straight cold cock with the elbow to the nose. Broke the nose. Luckily, I didn't have to have surgery, but yeah, that was not a good memory because it was a cheap shot. It wasn't just like, hey, I'm going for a rebound and I caught something, by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, I just got absolutely just clobbered by an elbow on purpose. So
You call
I'm
that
not
guy
going to
up
throw the
on
guy's name out there who did it because he ended up going and playing high-level college football. I think he played a year or two in the NFL. So it wasn't like it was a little guy that did it. It
Okay,
was
so then
it was a
that almost
dude.
makes it more epic that you took an elbow from a future NFL player, and were able to slough it off and not have that ruin your taste for basketball. But I'll say this as Pacific Northwest of a reference as possible. Let's give that stadium the kingdom treatment and bring it down on television. Let's blow that mother bleeper up.
Another small point, you throw in the Kingdom, right? So obviously, Scorebook Live is kind of the parent company that we run a lot of our Gonzaga Nation stuff through. So SB Live covers high school sports. You say the Kingdom, right? and I'm just going to go on a tangent here, and I don't like how the state of Washington does their state tournaments anymore. Currently, it's in the Tacoma Dome. When I played in the '97 state tournament for Prairie, we played in the King Dome. It was epic. It was unbelievable. You had a high school, you had the guys side on one, you had the girls going on the other. They did the bleachers in such a way where you could position yourself much better than in the Tacoma Dome. You could watch both games in the Tacoma Dome, but the way it was in the King Dome, they kind of bowled around the court. And semifinal night in the '97 state tournament, I think we had 12,000 people there. It was unbelievable. The King Dome was amazing setup for high school basketball.
Man, to have played a basketball game on the same field as Ken Griffey Jr. playing baseball at that same time, that must have been a heck of an experience. You're making me very jealous now. Very, very jealous. That's awesome. Let's talk transfer portal. Gonzaga is getting a player coming to a visit here. I want to make sure I don't get names wrong because I often say Brendan instead of Braeden. Braeden Smith, he's a transfer from Colgate. He's looking at Gonzaga. He's going to come take a visit. Your thoughts?
I like this possibility. I like this option for both Braden Smith as well as in particular for Gonzaga. He's a Seattle kid, went to Seattle Prep High School, played for Seattle Rotary, AAU wise on the Nike EYBL circuit. I had a chance to watch him a number of times play AAU with Seattle Rotary, and I liked him then simply because he's high level IQ, right? Really smart, sees the game, processes the game, makes good decisions, and he's skilled. I think one of the reasons maybe he wasn't, maybe he was overlooked by quote unquote higher level programs during the recruiting process is because he's a little smaller. He's 6 foot, 6'1", but me as a small guard, I try not to hold that against guys too much. So he's really skilled. He's got a high level IQ. He ended up going back to Colgate in the Patriot League, where there has been some really good players that have come out of that league in years past. I mean, you look at CJ McCollum played at Lehigh. Now he's not at that level where he's going to be, a borderline NBA All-Star in 10 plus years, but he's a really good player. I think he averaged about 12 points, nearly 6 assists, almost 2 steals a game last year. And he's basically started since day one at Colgate. Now, the question becomes is where does he fit in as far as roster flexibility? Where does he fit in as far as rotation? All those things that, the coaching staff will figure out with him. But I think if he sees and understands the big picture, I think it's a great addition for him. I think his skill set would bring a lot to Gonzaga's program. I think Gonzaga would elevate his opportunity to have a great college career, play in the NCAA tournament, maybe get himself ready to play professionally at whatever level that may be. Because again, so many guys get focused on NBA, where really maybe your true opportunities are going to lie playing in the EuroLeague, playing somewhere else down the road. So I like this kind of recruitment of him in the transfer portal, and it's going to be interesting to track and see where he goes.
Do you think, looking into your crystal ball, is Gonzaga in the lead here? Is there something that Gonzaga fans should be worried about? He's just come because I feel like if he's visiting, that's not a small thing for a transfer portal guy. High school kids maybe take a ton of visits and nothing official, just enjoying the pomp and circumstance. But for a transfer portal guy to be on campus taking a visit, that has to be a good sign. Yes.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think it's hard. It's hard in this day and age to say anybody's in the lead in a recruitment. I mean, you look at just what it popped up this morning on Twitter/X, right? Great Osibor signed a $2 million NIL deal to go to Washington to play for the Huskies. I mean, 2 years ago, he was with Danny Sprinkle at Montana State, and he started one game. He goes to Utah State, follows Danny Sprinkle there, and granted, he had a little bit of an NIL package, right? But he's, fighting for Mountain West Player of the Year, gets the Utah State to the NCAA tournament. Danny Sprinkle leaves, goes to UW. He had, I mean, Osibor had everybody recruiting him. Texas Tech, Louisville, UW were in his final three, from what I understand. But it shows on Twitter this morning, a $2 million deal for a player who really didn't play. Well, he played, he just didn't start at Montana State 2 years ago, and a lot of that was due to the fact that they had a really veteran, inexperienced ball club with guys returning. But shows you how quickly the script can be flipped in college basketball for programs, but as well as for players. It's really interesting to see.
It very quickly becomes the Ron Burgundy meme of, whoa, that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
You have guys going from, like you said, a year or 18 months ago being like, yeah, they played 3 minutes a game, had a board, had a point, and then you're like, oh, 21-year-old millionaire. Good for him. Man, any other transfer portal or recruiting news, or can we go on to just recapping what the Zags and the pros have been doing since the NBA playoffs are on fire right now?
No, I mean that's kind of the portal and the NIL stuff that it's kind of most pressing. The Braeden Smith one, as you mentioned, brought up, is very interesting, and then the NIL Osabor is, I mean, it's shocking the fact that that number is that big, but good for him, and good for all that tech money in Seattle that's trying to push the Huskies over the top.
Heck yeah, man. In terms of NBA playoffs, Thunder and Pacers are still going. So we've got several Zag alumni still out there kicking it. Your thoughts on just everything that we're seeing from our alumnus?
Well, two plays in particular really stood out for me in regards to former Zags in the NBA playoffs. The first would be, Andrew Nemhart's game winner. That was awesome. He's got the ball in his hands, shot clock, game clock winding down, creates space, knocks down a 30-footer for the win. That's awesome. That's something that I'm sure is going to be on a lot of recruitment reels to show guys about player development, as well as, hey, you want to play in the NBA, you can do there by getting to Gonzaga. You want to play at the highest stage in the NBA, not just get there, but play in the playoffs and have the ball in your hands and decision-making opportunities. You can do that through Gonzaga. So I'm sure that's going to be a big piece. The other one that caught my eye wasn't necessarily a scoring play. It was just a hilarious play, and it kind of shows Chet Holmgren's basketball IQ. The Thunder had to foul, and they wanted to put Derek Lively on the free throw line, who's not a great free throw shooter. And so you had Chet Holmgren chasing Derek Lively around the floor, trying to commit a foul to put him at the free throw line. It almost looked like a game of tag broke out in the half court in an NBA playoff game. I thought that was hilarious.
Interesting thing to me about Nemhart also, you just talk about the recruiting reels and the opportunities to say, hey, look, if you're here, you can be there. We're talking about him and Chet. They're separated. I'm just trying to do some really quick math here. They're separated by about 60 picks worth of NBA draft, high first round, low second round. To me, that also says, tenfold about what Coach Few and everybody can do, of just like, we can create this guy, but also the NBA can value him down here. This guy will, Nemhart, he'll be there too, making game-winning shots. And just that if Gonzaga can get you to that next level, that you will be gifted with a bunch of tools and mental strength and physical, and just it seems like consistently very good pros coming out. So I think that hopefully there's a little bit of that message too, of just like, I know everybody wants to be that first round lottery pick type vibes, but hey, just we'll get you in the door. We'll give you everything that you need, that once you get your pro shot, you will be able to capitalize on it. Anything that we've missed from this week in Gonzaga news before we say goodbye to everybody?
Nope. Great stuff. Look forward to catching up again next week. And who knows, maybe there'll be a couple more games of tag that break out in the NBA playoffs.
Hey, worst case scenario, I feel like I got to keep scratching at who this NBA or who this NFL player was, and other childhood trauma from Dan Dickau's basketball past, because that seems to be a good fountain of content. Thank you, everyone, for checking in. Oh, last thing, as always, Dan, what do we got on tap in the studio?
Well, we got a number. We're taking this week off recording in the studio, but we'll be back next week. I believe Eric McClellan's coming back in. We're working on setting up a time with Coach Few as well as Zach Norvell. So we should have a couple big ones coming up.
I love it. Oh, anytime we can get a sit down with Coach Few, always awesome. Make sure you check out everything that Dan is doing. You can also follow us on all the socials at Fan Nation Zags. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you guys next week.